Are you ready to ignite your financial future? Because today's guest is an award-winning financial planner. He's a dad of 3, devoted husband, fitness fanatic, and an expert in keeping it simple. With his infectious energy and passion for healthy living, our guest is here to help you achieve your financial freedom while living your best life. Whether you're just getting started on your financial journey or looking to take your wealth to the next level, our guest has the experience, knowledge, and proven strategies to help you get there. So if your goal is to retire financially free, I hope you're ready to learn, laugh, and feel inspired as we dive into the conversation with one of the brightest minds in finance. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome this week's guest, Joe Woodhouse. How are we doing, Joe?
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. I really, because for those that are kind of at home, some guests I don't know, but me and Joe know each other from way back. And I was like, I'm going to really hype you up because not only do you deserve it, but also because we know each other as well. So.
Well, you don't know this, but you're actually the reason I nearly quit creating content. And if it weren't for you, I don't think I'd have done it.
Really?
Yeah. So, God, going back to the summer of 2019, my mum got diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And it was terminal as well. And at that point, I'd been creating videos for two or 3 years and didn't get any traction from them. I weren't seeing any response back. I was getting no business from it. The only people that were commenting were my mum, my aunts.
Yeah. Wife.
Yeah. No, she weren't commenting.
Sometimes getting your children to chip in as well.
Yeah. And my mum got diagnosed with cancer and I just went into, can I swear?
Yeah, of course.
Right. Just went into fuck it mode. And I didn't create a video for about 2 or 3 months. Yeah. And you messaged me. It were either on LinkedIn, I can't remember what you, LinkedIn, WhatsApp or Instagram, one of the 3. And you sent me a message saying, mate, I've not seen your videos for a while. I miss them. When are you doing your next one? And that on God's honest truth, that was sort of the validation that I needed that people, well, at least one person's paying attention. So,
yeah.
Thank you for that.
Man, I mean, it's, I work a lot. I openly talk about this. I have a therapist that I speak to every week, not necessarily because I'm going mad or anything, but just I think it's good to speak to somebody that has outside professional expertise in kind of stuff that you experience throughout life, right? And one thing, he always talks about is obviously gratitude and showing gratitude to yourself, but also others. And I've always been big on kind of like, even if I see a stranger and they look nice, I'm like, hey, you look good today, or what's your aftershave? Perfume smells great, whatever. And I remember when you, and because we were on the same course with Spencer as well, I think I had a lot more invested interest in what you were doing as well. Do you know what I mean? And realistically, when you look back at that group of people that was together on, it's only really me and you that actually went off and kind of did and carried on pushing on with that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously it's turned out great for you now. And this is why we're here today to chat about
definitely.
that. So, and also one of the notes that I mentioned was I wanted to actually, and this is God's honest truth, first note was I literally wanted to congratulate you and say like how proud I am of like the stuff that you've achieved.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thank you.
Because, without kind of being like, I'm not licking Joe's ass just for the camera. when we was on the same, I remember when I was starting out my kind of like senior career in kind of like management and stuff, we both did a course with a friend of ours, Spencer. Yep. And when I met you, you were a shadow of the man you are now, right? I mean, I think you were kind of, we were talking a lot about it. And, you were kind of like, you did all right in your job, but you were looking to exceed. Yeah. But also as well, I think, admittedly yourself, you were overweight and you kind of weren't where you wanted to be in life. Yeah. And I think to take yourself from where you were to where you are today, like, a lot of people, like you say, will kind of look at it and go, I've not really got much results from that, so I'm just going to stop. Yeah. But you persisted, and it's great to see. And I'm sure not only just with me, but for other people that now speak to you about your content, wanting your advice, also say, and family as well, but they must look at you and be like, hats off, like really proud of you. Yeah. So Congratulations for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
But now the ass licking is over. Tell me what you do. For everyone that's kind of like listening at home, like, tell us a bit more about you and kind of like what it is you actually do.
Yeah, so by trade, I'm a financial planner, financial advisor, so I help predominantly expats with savings, financial planning, investing for the future, protecting the family, that sort of stuff. But I suppose what makes me a little bit different is I've always prided myself on just keeping things super simple. So my industry is filled with jargon and noise and bullshit, and it's created that way purposely, in my opinion. It don't win me any friends when I say this. It's created that way to ultimately keep the consumer at arm's reach and make people like me sound more important and more intelligent than we actually are. And in reality, if you follow a few simple steps, you can get where you need to be. And I've always been a strong believer, if you can't explain something to an 8-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself. And on the back of sort of that and guidance from Spencer, and I then started creating the videos many moons ago now. And they, over time, they've got better, I would like to think. And it seems to resonate with a lot of people, just my direct, simple, no bullshit approach.
Yeah.
I'm also not frightened of laughing at myself either. And that's something which I also believe helps, because I'm a strong believer if you're laughing, if you're smiling, if you're enjoying what you're watching, what you're consuming, you'll learn more and you'll return more information.
Yeah, 100%. And I think financial advisors tend to get a bad rap because...
And quite rightly so, a lot of them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And typically it's all about kind of like men's in suits, slick haircut, all that sort of stuff, and taking the big bonuses but not really giving much in return. But you know what you've done over the last few months is kind of like you offer that free advice. Yeah. And you put it out there and you make it simple for people. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, like I say, if someone watches my videos, they can get where they need to be.
Yeah.
Now look, I'd be lying if I said it didn't generate business, because it does.
But it didn't at the beginning though, right?
No. It took me 3.5 years to get my first inquiry of someone saying, I want to speak to you about X.
Was it 3.5 years? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 3.5 years. And actually, if it weren't for you, I think I'd have packed in doing it. If it weren't for Spencer, I'd have definitely packed in doing it.
Yeah.
So when I started putting them out as well, my industry's quite stuffy.
Yeah.
We all think we're better than what we are. And when I started putting the videos out, the amount of shit that I got, a lot of it not directly to my face, but indirectly, is embarrassing himself, is an embarrassment to the industry, is showing himself up, from so-called friends as well.
Really?
Oh mate, it were brutal. And if it weren't for having the likes of you and Spencer as a soundboard to bounce off, I don't think I'd have stuck with it.
Yeah.
And Spen actually said something to me once and it's always stayed with me, and it's, your opinion of me is none of my business.
Yeah.
And it were only when I really got my head around that and I stopped giving a shit about... When I say it out loud, it's crazy. I was holding myself back and not creating the content I wanted to create, such as like the skits and the just laughing at myself and adding more humour into it. I weren't creating those videos because I was worried about what other people in my industry thought about them.
Yeah.
But when I say it out loud, they're the only people that will never buy from me.
I know, yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Because I think what makes total sense to me about that is the fact that I experience the same thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll put some content out there and I'll think, oh, what if someone thinks of it like this, or what if someone thinks of that? And I still have it to this day. Like, I still think if somebody looks at me negatively, I'm like, but I think probably that's natural in terms of just human nature, right? I mean, you kind of want to, it's very difficult to accept criticism at the time. I feel, even though it's not criticism, it's more like negativity. But then once you kind of push through that bullshit, then it becomes a lot more simple. But Spencer also said one thing to me, which also stuck with me to this day, and that was like, you know, you've got to remember that there's people out there that want to consume your content, and the people that don't want to consume your content and speak badly about them, they're not your audience. Yeah. And that again is another reassuring factor that you just just to keep doing what you're doing. But it's true though. But one of the things I've noticed, especially on LinkedIn, there's so many people copying your strategies now. Like not necessarily with making the videos, but there's a lot more people speaking out about financial advice. Yeah. And you were the first one to do it. out of the people that I knew, you were the first. And it's funny because I can guarantee you that half of those people were the ones that were saying he was embarrassing himself.
Oh yeah.
But they're now doing it.
Yeah, and it went from he's embarrassing himself to then they just ignored it. And now the people that I know were bitching about me are the ones that are saying your content's amazing and start asking questions of, so do you get much business from it?
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get your first deal and things like that? And I'll always help anybody.
Yeah.
And I have these conversations with one of the lads that works with me, Ryan, and he's like, why do you give your sort of your secrets away as such? And I'm like, look, because one, I'm more than happily help anyone. Two, they'll not stick it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So when I see people all the time, they'll create a couple of videos, they'll do it for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then they disappear and they don't do it anymore. When they don't see that, because no one's got patience these days, have they?
Yeah, no. I mean, we live in a society of like everything needs to be now.
Yeah.
And what me and you both know is content. Whilst you see a 1 minute video, what goes into that 1 minute video is not 1 minute. It's a lot more than that. And I bet you've how many times have you recorded content and gone, I fucked up on that part, or you forget what you meant to say, or you kind of stutter a point, or the kids walk in and you're recording.
We did it this morning. Literally a 30-second video that myself and Ed, my videographer, we were trying to get, and I think it took us about 20 attempts to do it.
Yeah.
By the end of it, we got shooed away from security down at JBR as well. Apparently, you can't record down there without permission.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently. Or on the
busybodies. But what about the people that are recording anyway? So.
Well, no. Apparently, you're okay to do it on a phone, but not on a professional camera.
Oh wow.
So there you go.
Yeah.
That's something.
So let's go all the way back to the beginning.
Yep.
So I listened to a few podcasts where people have interviewed you, but got straight into the nuts and bolts of it. But I think to give you context of who you are. So, have you always been into finance? Was it always a dream when you were kind of like?
No.
A lot of kids turn around and go, I want to be a football player, but...
I want to be a boxer.
Did you?
Yeah, so I boxed as a kid. From being 10-year-old, amateur boxer, and that was what I wanted to do. And my dad's a market trader. So my dad sells second-hand bric-a-brac on Sheffield Market.
Yeah.
Rag and bone man. And I remember being about 13-year-old, and my dad saying to me, what do you want to do when you leave school, Matt? I want to box. He's like, what do you really want to do? I'm like, I want to box. He's like, what's your plan B?
Yeah.
And I just remember saying to him, well, I'm like, you seem to do all right. I'll just work on markets with you. And it was the biggest mistake I ever made, because then the 6-week holidays came up and he said, right, I want you to work on me with the markets for the school holidays. I'm like, I want to play my bike.
Yeah.
He said, I'll pay you £9 a day. So I'm like, 6 weeks, that's an Xbox. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So he took, so the first day, we left the house 4 a.m, went to Sheffield Market, worked on the market all day, got back, unloaded his van, loaded his van back up again for the next day, finished about 6 p.m, we're knackered. And he paid me my £9 wage in pound coins. Right, thanks. Turned away, he went, oh, Joe, come here. He said, I forgot to mention, because you're working now, you need to pay board money. I'm like, what's board money? He went, well, rent. And I'm like, why? And he said, well, what do you think pays for electricity, gas, your food, your clothes and everything else? So I need a third of your wage in board money. So I had to give him £3 back. Then he said, oh, and how did you get to the market today? And I'm like, in your van. He said, right, so I need £2 petrol money. So I gave him £2 back. So that with that, no, I'm fucking hell, £9 to £4. Gets better. Next day, we gets up, that's set off. He says, oh, have you got your wages from yesterday? I'm like, what for? He went, well, what are you going to eat all day? So he paid me £9. He took 3 off me for board. He took 2 off me for petrol money for his van. And I had to buy breakfast and lunch every day. So I came out with about £1.50 a day.
Wow.
And at day 3, I said to him, I don't want to come on markets anymore, Dad. And he just went, tough, you've committed.
Yeah.
So he dragged me there for the full 6-week holidays. When we finished the 6-week holidays, what do you want to do when you leave school? I still don't know, but I don't want to work on markets with you.
Yeah.
So it worked anyway, because that was the message you wanted to get over to me.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you said, and it's very similar with my parents. So school holidays, they didn't drag me to work, but it was very similar from a young age. And your family demographics, like kind of like working class family, or
yeah. So my dad's a market trader, always has been. Still does it now. My mum, when she was with us, she's worked in a school. She worked as a secretary at the NHS.
Yeah.
They both always worked. My dad's always worked long hours, and I think I get a lot of my work ethic off my dad.
Yeah.
My dad's always had the attitude: if you're going to do anything, you put 110% in, or you don't bother at all. Like there's no middle ground with my old man.
Yeah, but I think those lessons that he taught you right there were so important, because I had it when I was a kid as well, and school holidays came around. I had to do all the chores just to even get pocket money, and then when pocket money stopped, it was like, now you're old enough to go get a job like a paper round or whatever. And it taught me that I had to work to earn money, and you know, those lessons in my life. I'll always take, if I ever have a family, that's something I'll definitely 100% integrate throughout my children as well, because it's just understanding the importance of what you have to do just to earn that money. Because I see some friends now, like some of my friends back at home, and they're super clever kids, got everything they wanted, but they never understood what it took. To
completely. I think a lot of financial education should start at a very young age.
They should be teaching it at school, mate.
Oh, 1,000%. But on the flip side of that, teachers aren't qualified to talk about it.
Yeah.
So they need to bring in external people to help with that. And unfortunately, that doesn't get them an outstanding mark at Ofsted once they're ticking boxes. So the system itself needs to change.
Yeah.
It's not the teachers that are at fault, it's the actual system, the overall system, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now, at the beginning of the pod, we said about obviously what it was like when we first met. So he was over, obviously, I mean, if you're watching the YouTube version now, you can obviously tell that he's super buff. I'm not even joking. When I walked through the door, I gave you a hug, and I could feel the back muscles. I'm like, Jesus Christ. What was the turning moment for you to just switch things out and go, right, I'm going to lose weight and live a healthier lifestyle?
I mean, just to put in perspective, I'm 5'9.5", and at my worst, I was 120 kilo.
Yeah.
But actually, growing up, I boxed. So growing up, I was super fit. Then moved to Abu Dhabi in my early 20s, and then started boozing, started going out on the weekends, and I put half a stone on, then a stone and a half, then 2 stone, and it just sort of progressively got worse. Lost a load of weight again when we got married, and then it started piling back on. And at the time, I was blaming everything and everyone. I was travelling, I was flying all around the Middle East with work, so I was living at a hotel 3 days a week. So I was living, and then, because I was travelling, didn't see my missus or my friends, so then at the weekends I'd get back here and just blow out.
Yeah.
We'd go boozing, we'd do brunches, we'd go for nice meals, and it was just this vicious cycle week after week. And it got to the stage when my wife Laura was pregnant with my twin boys, and I was like, right, I need to change. I don't want to be a fat dad.
Yeah.
And then the boys were born, and I'm like, right, I'll start when the boys are born. Then the boys were born, and they spent 2 weeks in intensive care when they were born.
Oh, wow. So is that like a normal thing, or?
They had a few issues when they were born.
Okay.
Which, was horrendous, like one of the worst experiences of my life. But when they were in hospital, I told myself, right, I'll do it when they get home. Then when we got them home, sleepless nights started. Right, I'll do it when they start sleeping. And then before I knew it, another year had gone. But at this point, it was in my head. I'm like, I need to change. I was out of breath climbing the stairs.
Yeah.
I couldn't lift the kids up past a certain point.
Yeah.
It was horrendous.
I mean, I remember times where we'd be in that class and you'd be sweating on the forehead. And I remember thinking like, wow, like...
Yeah. And then my mum got diagnosed with terminal cancer, summer of 2019, and that for me were like a rocket up the arse.
Yeah.
And it were at that point, I sort of call it fate, call it whatever you want, but that happened. It was at that point where I just had this sort of vision of my mum's had her choice taken away from her. I don't want to waste mine. I was that bad. I was honestly concerned about not seeing my kids grow up. I was that bad. And now we're, like I said, call it fate or whatever you want, but now we're after that. I got a message from a now very good friend and my first online coach, fitness coach, James Goff. Basically messaged me on Facebook, something on the lines of I help busy professionals lose weight, get their life in order, like a sales pitch. And I just messaged him back saying, I'm in.
Yeah.
I was like, let's have a call first. I'm like, no, I'm in. Just tell me how much it is. I'll pay you. I need to sort it now. And then we started working together, and we did for a long time, and I lost almost 40 kilo working with James.
Was there any like yo-yoing, or once you were in, it was like done?
I was dialed in. It started off sort of baby steps. So first it was making sure I'm sleeping right, getting my steps in, watching my food. Then I did resistance training in. I think we did 3 days a week, then 4 days a week. Now I do 5 days a week and a couple of rest days a week. So it was just sort of building it up, but it became...
It becomes an addiction.
I'm a numbers man. Yeah. So watching that weight, we used to get weighed every, well, I still do. I get weighed every single morning, which sounds a bit obsessive, but every day watching that number fall on the scales, when I'm going in the gym, watching the numbers increase, either the number of reps or the weight I'm moving.
Yeah.
So for me, it was chasing those numbers, and it was tangible. Do you know what I mean? I could see the result in front of my eyes, and that's what sort of kept me going with it. And it then also now it's a habit, it's routine.
Yeah.
So if I don't go to the gym in the morning, I feel lost. It knocks my day completely.
Yeah, it's the same for my for me, gym is a part of a daily routine. If I cannot go to the gym in the morning, I feel like I'm behind for the rest of the day. Yeah. Almost taking a rest day is hard for me.
Yeah, well, my rest is I do cardio in the morning.
Yeah, exactly.
So I need to move. And the mental space as well for me, like, I've worked out over the years that I'm very good at, I enjoy solving problems.
Yeah.
And if I don't give myself problems to solve, my brain finds problems. And so it's always thinking about this, and then what about that, and then you need to sort this, you need to follow up on that. The gym for me is the only time where there's no external noise.
Yeah.
It's just me, my headphones in, trying to move that weight.
Yeah.
So for me,
it's like a meditation.
Oh, mate, it's amazing. Yeah, I love it.
Do you think working out is a part of being successful?
I think it helps. And that was the other thing as well, back when it started. I'm like, and the excuse of I don't have the time is bullshit.
Yeah.
And I told myself it for years, but what I found when I started working out and started spending an hour in the gym a day, it bought me an extra 2 hours, because I had much more energy. I weren't crashing in the afternoon. I could go 2 hours longer, 3 hours longer.
Yeah.
I was sleeping better at night because of the day I'd had. So, I suppose, it is, to be fair.
Because it's one thing that I kind of look at a lot, because a lot of these, I mean, and I'm one of those people that I just like to absorb as much information as possible. And I always tend to see that, you know, with a lot of people that I look up to that are successful, they always have working out as a part of their morning routine, or a routine in general. And I always think, is it linked? You know, is it linked? And I think one thing that I was listening to the other day was someone was saying about, you know, when you're in the gym lifting weights and you don't want to be there and it's hard and it gets to the point where like, I want to give up, but you keep going. It's like you train your brain to not give up and be weak. It's like kind of like, it's almost like it teaches you to be persistent, and okay, I've been able to do that after a challenge, and that's first thing in the morning. Now I can go on and achieve the rest of the day.
100%, yeah. It's the whole thing with motivation and discipline, isn't it?
Yeah.
Motivation disappears eventually. So you need discipline to keep going when you don't feel motivated.
Yeah. Now, we spoke a bit about family as well. What does family mean to you?
A lot. Well, it's always meant a lot to me, but more so since my mum died. My mum passed away in 2021, and for me that was it. I went in a very dark place for a few months. I know you spoke about speaking to a therapist. I spoke to two that summer. I just went into fuck it mode, like didn't care about anything, anyone. I couldn't control my emotions. I was vile to be around. And I spoke to 2 therapists then. I didn't gel with them. I'm more of a tough love sort of person. Like, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. And I probably weren't in the right headspace for it either. But what I found was that the people I spoke to, they were making excuses for me. So it was like, an example is, I had a massive barney with Laura, which was completely my fault, called her a vile name. And that afternoon I was on this therapy session with this therapist, and I called my wife cunt this morning. And they're like, yeah, but you need to think about what circumstances led up to you doing that. It's not your fault. I'm like, it's my fault, because I said it. Yeah. It was me that said it.
Yeah.
Well, what led to that? I was like, me just being vile and in a mood. Right, but you need to think about what's happened to you, and you shouldn't blame yourself. And I'm like, and I just couldn't get my head around it. Yeah. I'm like, stop feeling sorry for me.
Yeah.
And the other thing they both tried doing as well, which I said to them from the start, is do not prescribe me anything. Like, I will not, I don't want, and I'm not poo-pooing any sort of medication, but for me personally, and this might be a very narrow-minded view, is I saw what it did to my mum when my granddad passed away. I saw that what it did to my dad when my mum got diagnosed with cancer, when the doctor just went, here, take these. Yeah. And it just turned my dad into a zombie. And I've always felt like I've had quite a sharp brain, and I didn't want to lose that edge, and I was petrified of losing that edge. So I said, look, don't prescribe me anything at all. I don't want anything. And both of them, I think this will help you. And I'm like, I'm not going to speak to you again.
Yeah.
That was the one thing I asked you, no.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then I reached out to a chap called Paul Mort, who's now a mentor of mine and good friend. And basically he helps people, he helps people basically get the shit in order.
Yeah.
And I listened to his audiobook, Paul Mort Will Save Your Life, and it literally changed my life.
Really?
Big time.
What's he? I mean, he's got a pretty big podcast as well, right?
Yeah. Great guy, but he's from the north.
He's very similar to you, though, isn't he?
And that was the thing. I resonated with Paul. Yeah. These are the 2 people I couldn't resonate with, and them saying, "I know how you feel." I'm like, "No, you've never." And I'm like, one of them said to me, "I understand how you feel." I'm like, "Has your mum died?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, no." I'm like, "You don't understand how I feel, then." Yeah. And I was probably I was in a bad place, and I was probably in a very argumentative mood with them, and I probably went into it with the wrong mindset anyway.
Yeah.
But with Paul, what I like about Paul is he gives you it's just, I'm very logical as well and practical. Like, and this is what I said to them. I'm like, show me what to do to get out of this hole. I'll do anything. Just tell me what to do. And like, well, it doesn't work like that with mental health. And one of the other things they asked me as well was, do you feel depressed? And I'm like, what's depression?
Yeah.
And they couldn't tell me what depression was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if you tell me what it is, I'll tell you if I am or not.
Yeah.
But they're like, well, it's different for everyone. I'm like, well, I don't know if I am then.
Yeah.
Like I said with Paul, it just gave me a step-by-step guide to do this and this and this, and then work on this, and it made sense to me.
What type of things do you have to work on?
So big thing is getting a routine.
Yeah.
So I now journal every day. Which I feel like a 12-year-old girl when I tell people. But it's question-led journaling.
Yeah.
So it's for me. Yeah, no. So for me, what journaling is for me, as I mentioned before, I enjoy solving problems, and if I don't give myself problems to solve, my brain finds problems. So in the morning, it's asking myself questions like, what's going to be the best part of my day? Who can I positively impact today? Who can I help today? What could possibly go wrong today?
Yeah.
How will I react to that? What's the number one priority I need to achieve today?
Yeah.
So it's things like that, asking that in the morning, and then in the evening it's going through it of what was the best part of my day? Who did I positively impact today? What could I have handled better today? What are my 3 wins from today?
Yeah.
So it's for me, what it is, it's guiding your brain where to go. So it's like a compass for your brain.
Yeah, I think you got to acknowledge what's going on inside as well.
Yeah.
Because if you just keep going and going and going, I had that for a long period of time where I wouldn't ever acknowledge anything. And then I got to the point where I did get to that boiling point, which is why I went on to have a therapist. And going back to what you said, mate, trust me, I didn't just walk into one therapy meeting and find the right therapist for me. It took so many. And at one point I gave up. I was like, this is impossible. Like, it's literally impossible.
Yeah.
Because, I was sitting in front of and the same questions. I said, how did it make you feel? And how did you feel off the back of that feeling? I was like, I'm paying you 900 dirhams an hour for you to ask me these stupid questions. Like, whereas now the therapist that I've got is based in South Africa. It's more of a mate. It's more like just a catch up. It's not actually a bit like we don't really break it down. But I'll say I'm feeling this way, and he goes, okay, well let's try and break this down now and get into the nitty gritty of it and stuff. And rather than going like, how did it make you feel? It's always like, okay, just so I can understand this, let's talk about your childhood. Was there any moments where you ever felt like, and that was like uncovering a lot more, but it took 4 or 5 and lots of money to get to that point. Yeah. Whereas now, the therapist that I got is more of a friend, just a sounding board sometimes to talk about things. But yeah, I mean, so are you still working with Paul?
Yeah, definitely. So I still work with Paul very closely, speak to him a lot. And sort of through that and the work I did with Paul and what happened, this is a very long answer to your question about family, but it made me redefine what my definition of success is.
Yeah.
Like, big time. So before, for me, success was earning as much money as possible. It was closing every deal. It was taking as many clients as possible. It was being number one at everything within the industry and just chasing all those accolades. For me now, since working with Paul and working on myself, I've realised that my definition of success now is it's finishing work at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's bath and bed. It's I have a bath and bed routine with the kids every day. It's switching my phone off 1 day a week. It's working 4 days a week and giving myself 3-day weekends. So I've got an extra week with the family, extra day with the family. It's going on holiday with the family for a week and switching my phone off completely and just being fully present in that moment.
Yeah.
So that now, for me, is my definition of success, because my dad, he were great, like, love him to bits, and he did a lot for us, but it was always working.
Yeah.
Always working, and I don't want, you can never get that time back, and you can never get that bond back.
Yeah, I completely agree, because one thing that I dialed in on, especially with like working with a therapist as well, is why do you always strive? I had a thing within me that I had to be the best. I still have it, I haven't got rid of it. I still want to be the best, but it got to my why, and I suppose it's all about kind of like your why with changing your habits and the way you lost like so much weight and the fuck it mode and stuff like that. Is you really dialed into your why, and you got there eventually. And my why is exactly what you said: freedom.
Yeah.
I don't care about money. I use money to buy stuff that, like, go out for dinner with my girlfriend, do nice things, go back to my family, be able to buy concert tickets for my mum for Christmas for someone she loves, or, all these different things, or fly my sister out to come see me and have a holiday with my niece. Like, it's not the money that I care about. It's the experiences I'll get from that. Yeah. And ultimately, as much as a lot of people will say this, that necessarily don't have too much money. They'll say, oh, well, money doesn't make you happy. It doesn't make you happy, but it kind of gets you to the point of and that's why, you should do things wisely now, to the point of where you can have the freedom. Yeah. And freedom doesn't just mean time. Freedom means everything, being able to just do what you want with the people you love.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree.
So let's go into the financial journey. And when was your first financial advisor job?
I fell into it. So how I got into financial services, I was 16-year-old, left school at sort of 15, 16, and I was going to college. So this was like June, going to college in September. And the only reason I was all right at school, but I didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to go to university. But the only reason I was going is because my parents and my teachers convinced me that without college and university, you're either going to work on the markets with your dad, which we've already worked out, I didn't want to do that, or you're going to be a bin man. I didn't want to be a bin man. So I was sort of forced into it to get a good job. And then the summer school holidays started, and my mum were like, right, you need to go and get a job. All right, I'm going to college in September. She's like, yeah, but you need to get a part-time job. So they kicked me out of the house every morning to go and look for a job. They'd go to work, I'd come back round the corner, go back to bed or play my PlayStation or Xbox or whatever it were back then. And then this went on for a few weeks, and then my mum came home one day. So my brother used to play Sunday League football. He's 4 years younger, Josh. My mum came home, she went, I've got you an interview at a bank. I went, what? What for? She went, don't know, but the bank manager of Lloyd's is one of the parents at the football club. And her exact words were, don't fuck it up. Right? So, and I didn't want this job. I didn't even know what this job was. So I went to this interview in Sheffield City Centre, and I took a mate with me.
Yeah.
So I took a mate with me. We went into town on the bus. He came in the banking hall with me. He sat down, I went up. And Julie Chant, she's called, and I owe her a lot. Julie pulled me to one side.
Julie was the bank manager, yeah?
Yeah. She looked me up and down, and then she looked over my shoulder at my mate sat on the seats, and she went, come here. Took me in an office, slammed the door behind me, and said, listen to me, drop the cocky attitude. She said, I know you switched on, and I've promised your mother I'm going to give you a job. So if you lie to her, she'll know, because I'm going to ring your mum now and tell her I've given you the job. Now get the fuck out of my office. Right?
And that was it?
That was it. And I'm walking out, and mate went, how did it go? And I'm like, I think I've got a job in a bank. He went, doing what? I went, I still don't know. Right? So I started as a cashier, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Not with the cashiering side, balancing my till at the end of every day I was horrendous at. I think I got the record for the most till errors because I weren't paying attention to that. But what I loved was the talking to people, the sales side of it, the engaging with people. So like, remember, it's different these days, but remember when we were younger and you'd go into the bank and they'd be trying to sell you a credit card, a loan, they'd be trying to upgrade your account. I was like a dog with a bone, to the point where people used to avoid me in the queue because they'd heard me pitch the 5 people before them. So they'd wait until one of the other cashiers were available before they went. And so I did that, fell in love with like the relationship building side of things with people, and then it just worked my way up through there, really.
Yeah. And you obviously lived in the Middle East for a little while. When did you move out here?
2010. So I was 22-year-old.
Oh wow, so that was literally just after all the crash and kind of like things were just getting back together.
Yeah, so how that came about, so when I was, again, at the bank, my best mate, who was best man at my wedding, our best man at his, John Green, again, another person I know a lot too. So John's 10 years older than me, and when I was 17, 18, he was the guy with the Porsche. He was the guy with the nice house. Everyone loved him. He got this like big presence about him, and I absolutely worshipped him. And so I just pestered him. I never left him alone. And I basically wanted to be him. And he then got a job in 2008 out here. And I said, I'll come work for you. He's like, let me get settled first. And at this time, I must have been 19, 20.
Oh, wow.
And then once he was settled, 18 months later, he said, right, I want you to come out and work for me. And I then came out, I think 3 months after that, once visa and everything was sorted. And, you know, it's like yourself going to the consulate and getting that stamp. And
Yeah. Just a second ago, I mentioned about just after the crash.
Yep.
Obviously, you're a financial advisor, so let's talk about the current situation, because I was actually thinking it on the way here, because I wasn't actually going to talk about like the economy or anything, because you know what it's like living in Dubai. You kind of like, I mean, we're around a place that's thriving, so you don't really understand what's going on in the rest of the world. But how do you see everything playing out at the moment?
I mean, what's happening at the minute is completely normal. So the market goes through these cycles, and if you go all the way back to 1928, there has been 26 bear markets throughout that time, which is basically when the market falls, with an average loss of, I think, 34%. But there's been 28 bull markets where the market increases with an average return of over 100%.
Yeah.
So these market cycles are completely normal, and that's all we're going through at the minute. Yes, it feels worse because we're living in it at the moment, but what follows any any sort of market sell-off, any fall in the markets or any recession is a recovery.
Yeah.
Which basically means that things will get better. But the other problem you've got at the minute is there's more media now than ever.
Yeah, more social media, more fake news.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what sells more eyes, that this is completely normal, we're going to be fine, or worst financial year since X, worst financial crash since Y. Yeah. That gets more eyes to the page. And ultimately, as we all know, attention is the new currency, isn't it?
Yeah. But inflation is a big thing. Mm-hmm. Is that normal?
I mean, look, we've lived in through most of our working career, inflation's always been really low. But if you go back before that, historically, it has been higher than what it is now.
Yeah. When was the highest inflation then?
I think again before my time, but I think in the mid 80s.
Okay.
Well, it depends on what country.
Yeah.
If you're talking Germany, or if you're talking UK, mid 80s.
Yeah.
But the Bank of England, if we're looking at the UK, because I know the UK market more, the Bank of England has predicted that inflation towards the end of this year will be half of what it is now. And that's good. That basically means they're getting a grip on it and things are going to start to come down. So it is a temporary thing. It's been led by supply chain issues since COVID, because nothing was made for this amount of period. No one was spending money. And then all of a sudden, everyone's back spending as they were, but the backlog of goods, of services, of products was not there.
Yeah.
So getting them shipped out, that was an issue with supply chains. You know yourself with supply chains.
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, you had the energy prices soaring on the back of Russia-Ukraine with the war.
Yep.
And obviously all the money that the banks have been printing for well over a decade hasn't helped either, because there's a lot more money in circulation in the system, which devalues it, which also pushes inflation up.
Yeah. But also I suppose there's a couple of things that have happened recently that have probably encouraged people to invest money, and that is obviously the news of Credit Suisse and also SVB.
Yep.
What's your kind of like overview on them? I mean, this is, by the way, this is all personal opinions, so.
I mean, I know the Swiss regulator said they're going to basically bail out Credit Suisse.
It doesn't give you much confidence if people are investing, you know, through them.
I agree. Yeah, I do completely agree. I mean, one thing I hope it doesn't do is push people into more non-regulated crypto assets, because no doubt all the crypto bros are going to be swinging from the rafters now.
I literally was when I saw like the Credit Suisse thing happen, because in my mind, and I'm a retail investor, right? So I'm not necessarily somebody that's that experienced. I will go with some of the safe bets in the markets and stuff. But obviously you see that, and then you think to yourself, that just sparks. Again, it's like attention, you know, gets the attention. Yeah. Everyone sees it, and they're like, and the first thing I thought was, SVB, Credit Suisse, what bank is next?
Yeah, so I actually had an interesting conversation around this yesterday with our chief investment officer, and just saying, look, do you think there will be a big ripple effect on the back of this? And I don't think there will be, if I'm honest. I do think they'll try and get a grip on this pretty quick. But like I say, there is a lot of attention on it at the minute. Yeah. Did you see the crypto ad?
No.
So somebody's hired a transit van, in the US, the equivalent of a huge double-door van, plastered a crypto ad all over the side of it for their crypto company and parked it outside SVB.
Wow.
It's basically saying safe place to put your money.
Oof.
And now, but it's things like that. And my issue with crypto is that a lot of people buying it don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, and but the thing is as well, I think a lot of people won't even understand traditional investments either, right? And also attention as well. So when you see it, you see it now, and I actually look at things, especially on like social media ads and YouTube. So many people are on those platforms now, just making ads about whether it's to grow your business, grow your finances.
I'll get them all the time.
It's actually, it gets to the point where you think to yourself like, wow, just this has to stop. But with the banks though, with your kind of, when you advise your clients on investments, does that involve any kind of like working with banks for the investments, or?
I mean, some of the banks do have sort of investment platforms where the money sits, but to a certain extent, that's really only the software behind it. Because ultimately, the money is invested into the investment funds or the companies that it's invested in. Such as like your Vanguards, your Rathbones, your BlackRocks, people like that. So it's essentially it's them that are actually holding that money. Obviously, if you've got cash in Credit Suisse do have that cash. Which again, at the same time, is why I also say to people is, look, you don't need to keep your life savings in cash. Also for the reason that it's losing money once you take inflation into account. Literally every single day, your money is getting devalued.
And obviously we're talking about we spoke very, very briefly about crypto. I've seen your content around crypto. What's your general overview of crypto?
It's just that people, it's become too trendy. And when something becomes too trendy and you've got butchers and bakers and candlestick makers telling you what to do with your life savings, you either need to do a hell of a lot of your own research or you need to run for the hills, because the people that are telling you what to do with it don't know themselves. It is a very new thing in the grand scheme of things. If we compare that to such as traditional investments such as the stock market or property, we've got 100 years worth of data that shows you that over the medium to long term it only ever goes in one direction. We've not got that for cryptocurrency, and again, that's what it actually is. It's not an investment, it's a currency, it's a means of trade. And people are either trying to make a lot of money quick or they're losing a lot of money quick by essentially gambling of where they think that price is going to go.
I think crypto is right now is a gamble. But also as well, I think, and I suppose I'm probably asking these questions of the mindset of thinking like, I mean, and this is genuinely just truth coming out. Sometimes my opinions of the markets are like, especially when, say for example, you're investing in a big business that's launching an IPO. I mean, you can stamp this rumor out and tell me if this is factual or not. But what I've heard is, when an IPO is being listed, it always gets presented to all the VC firms first, so they can plunk a load of money into it, launch, and then the retail investor gets it. So like when you hear stuff like that in the market, it does also make you think, oh, maybe, and then especially as with crypto, they've changed the narrative that, you know, this is for the people, like this is so you can build your wealth and all that stuff. So when you hear so many things about, you know, this is how IPOs go and this is how investing in the stock market will go, or whatever it may be, like you say, it leaves you very confused and leaves you understanding like what is actually the truth. Yeah,
I don't know if that is 100% true either way, but what I do know is that if you're investing in the stock market, there's regulators involved, there's auditors involved of all these individual companies. They have to report profit and loss earnings every year. Like the regulators are also involved, not for these individual companies, but also for the protection of the investors as well. Now look, do they always get it right? No, which is why there's obviously sometimes issues. But if you compare that to the big sell with cryptocurrencies, that it is unregulated. So there is no sort of protection. There's no third-party protection there. There's no one to look after you or look out for you. Well, I mean, look, for me, I just think it's like I said, I think it's a gamble because again, it provides no value to you today either. So for me, investing is buying something what grows in value but also pays you an income while you hold it. You can hold a Bitcoin for, if it's still around 1,000 years, for 1,000 years. And it won't earn you a penny until the day you come to sell that in order to eat.
Whereas you've got a lot of compounding and...
And again, you're selling that in the hope that some other fool will pay you more money than what you paid for it.
So it is a big gamble, I suppose. I mean, Web3, I've been doing a lot of interviews with Web3 people and kind of guys that work on the blockchain. And one thing I love is just getting all that information. But you know, when people talk about the metaverse, for example, that's something that really blows my mind because I think to myself, I wouldn't want to live in that world. Like, why would I want to be in that world? But you see so many people going in that direction, and talk about all these digital currencies where you can spend in the metaverse. I'm like, I don't care about the metaverse. I want real life.
Yeah.
Like, after a long day at work and I've been staring at my screen all day, the last thing I want is to be able to
put some goggles on.
I want to go interact with some humans. But it is crazy. But let's right. I mean, you're obviously expert in building wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about building wealth then. So first of all, any success stories from your clients that you would?
Yeah, lots. So I mean, my biggest success story is one of the things I'm most passionate about is family protection. So life insurance, serious illness cover, making sure that your family is taken care of should the worst happen. And there was a client who lived out in Dubai actually, and he spoke to him about life insurance. He didn't believe in it. It took me and his wife a long time to talk him around. He took out an insurance policy, then passed away not long after.
I think I heard about this. Yeah.
And then his wife and daughters moved back to the UK, and it took care of them. And she's a good family friend now actually, and she actually said to me that, Joe, you've literally saved our life.
Yeah.
So that was a big one for me.
You look like you're welling up.
Yeah, I am. Oh, jeez.
He's a good friend.
Yeah. It weren't well.
It must be like
it was just the emotional thing of knowing that I'd taken care of that family.
Yeah.
Well, not me, but the policy.
Exactly.
That meant a lot. Obviously, I've had clients sort of retire in a much stronger financial position because ways we've helped, and big thing for me is just simplifying it, because, like I said, a lot of my industry is overcomplicated.
Yeah.
So I suppose the biggest success stories for me is when I can sort of break through all that bullshit and explain something to you in plain English, and when you see that penny drop,
Yeah.
when someone goes, oh, it makes sense now.
Yeah. Okay. And when you get people knocking on, I mean, obviously you're a man in demand now. I mean, in the last kind of few months, I kept seeing on your social media, just like I'd check on your videos, and there was one I was watching. It was like the myths of investment, or it was one of the videos,
Yeah.
and you got this really funny picture of like this person's like, and you've obviously built up your following quite a lot recently.
Yep.
So now you're a lot more high in demand. But before, when you were first starting out, what was kind of like the advice that you were giving people to? I know you said simplifying things, but someone walks through your door and says, right, I want to retire at say 60, and I want to make sure that I've got enough money to retire on. What do people need to do?
Well, the first thing is, look, the number one question I get asked is, what's the best investment I can make? And it's quite frustrating because a lot of people that ask me that don't have the steps in place to be able to do that. So the first thing I would say to anyone is, look, first thing you need to do is make sure you got your any unsecured debts paid off. So not your mortgage, but any of the debts you've got, get them paid off. Credit cards, loans, store cards, overdrafts. Just get the debt cleared. Once you're debt free, but at the same time as that, make sure if you've got a family that you've got life insurance. Because especially if you are the main earner in the household, if you didn't come home tomorrow, your family, and then go, look, my mum died 2 years ago. I was in my mid-30s, okay, and I felt like a black cloud was over my head. It was horrendous. I couldn't imagine my 4-year-old twin boys and my 18-month-old daughter going through that, and then 3 months later, sorry kids, mummy's got to sell the house because dad didn't think you were worth 100 quid a month.
Yeah.
And that's the way that's the way I think about it. That if you die tomorrow, it's not just you that dies, it's your income as well for the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So you need to make sure you've got proper cover in place to protect your family, and also if you're diagnosed with serious illness. Because again, the same thing that if a doctor, and again I'm not going to wish this on anyone, but if a doctor taps you on the shoulder yesterday and says you've got cancer, what then?
Yeah.
Because yes, you've got your medical insurance, yes, the treatment will be covered, but I'm guessing, what's the sick pay at your work? If they don't pay you after a month, so let's say you get paid for a month, but you've got 12 months worth of chemotherapy, you've still got your rent to pay, You've still got your kids' schooling to pay. You've still got your car to pay for. You still need to eat. What's going to pay for all that? Yeah, your treatment's going to be covered while ever you're employed with that company. At the same time, you're not covered with NHS. So you can't fly back to the UK and carry on your chemotherapy there because they'll not do it. So you're stuck here, no income, going through all this medical treatment, you feel like shit, but you've got all these debts and all these bills mounting up. There is a policy you can take out, which in the event of you being diagnosed with a serious illness, pays you a lump sum. So I would get that sorted. Once you've sorted that, build up 6 months worth of expenses in a bank account. So this is your emergency pot. This is if your car breaks down, if your boiler blows up back home, family emergencies, you get a leak in the roof, whatever it may be. This is there as an emergency pot, because if you don't have that and something happens, you're then bouncing off credit cards, which takes you 10 steps back. Once you've got your emergency pot in place, then it's time to look at investing. And the first thing I advise anyone to do when it comes to investing is, I mean, we spoke about it earlier, what your why is. Like, attach a why to it, attach a real tangible, this is why I'm doing it. Because the reasons for that is you then know what you need to do, but also on the rainy days when you're going on holiday or when it's Christmas or when the markets are a little bit down like now, you don't go, I'm not going to do it for a few months, I'm going to sit back. I'll invest double next month, because you won't. Yeah. So it keeps you going. And a prime example of that is, so I've got 3 children under the age of 5. For me to send all 3 of them to university in the UK, it's going to cost me over £650,000.
Wow.
Now, there's 3 ways I can pay for that. One is I can worry about it when they're 18 and hope that, because if they went today, I'd be able to afford it.
Yeah.
So I can worry about it when they're 18, but the risk with that is, what if work's not going as well? What if I don't want to work then? What if I want to start slowing down? Second way I can do it is worry about it when they're 18 and take a loan out, or get the kids to take a loan out, which for me is crazy, because you're ultimately taking this massive cost and you're doubling it again.
One question I was going to say is, would you, with everything your parents or your dad taught you on the markets, like, would you be more inclined to get your kids to pay for their own education? But I suppose obviously that answer is no.
No, because I don't want my kids starting their working life at 23, 24 with a 70 grand noose around the neck. Now look, they might not want to go to university. If they don't, that money's there for a deposit for a house for them.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just, look, I'm better. I've always been a fan of the old saying that if you prepare to,
if you fail to prepare,
you're prepared to fail.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same with this. I'd rather have the money, have the assets there and not need them, than need them and not have them.
Yeah.
And it's the same with retirement. So if you're planning what your retirement is, you need to work out when you want the option to stop working. You need to work out what sort of lifestyle you want at that point, then how much that's going to cost you. Then you need to factor inflation into it, because if you want 5 grand a month now, or 30,000 dirham a month now to live off, that's not going to be 30,000 dirham a month in 15, 20 years. It's going to be double that to keep up with inflation. So you need to work out what that is, then work out how much that then means you need in a pot at that point, and then funnel it back to today to say, look, you either need to invest that amount as a lump sum now, or X amount per month, per quarter, every 6 months on an ongoing regular basis.
Yeah.
Does sound really complicated. There are online calculators where you can do that yourself, or if you want to hand with it, just speak to someone that knows what they're talking about. Speak to a qualified financial professional.
What does there's a lot of things you spoke about there, and also as well, I'm always glad to have these conversations, because it also clears up a lot in my mind. You know, I come in here thinking financial advice, it's like, how do you just build wealth? But what you've just explained there is it's not about just building wealth, it's about protecting yourself at the same time.
Yeah, getting those foundations laid.
So how do you go about identifying the right insurance provider? Because again, like everything in life, you always hear horror stories about insurance policies you take out, and then there's some sort of clause in 125-page terms and conditions which says, if you're bold, this doesn't apply to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm saying it like just joking around, but you know, you do hear about those horror stories. Or they say, you know, I've heard friends as well, which were paying into a 25-year savings plan, and then they wanted to withdraw because they had some struggles, and then got absolutely stung for it. So like, again, when you're talking about insurance providers as one, and I suppose we'll do this on a step-by-step basis rather than categorize.
Yeah, of course.
Like, so we'll put it into the first category. So insurance, how do you find the right insurance providers for that?
I mean, first of all, I'd make sure it's an international policy. So make sure that it's a reputable company, household name, that they'll cover you regardless of where you go.
Yeah.
I'd also make sure that it is a proper life insurance policy and not an accidental death policy, which aren't worth the paper that they're written on, which basically means that it only covers you if you die through means of an accident. But for obvious reasons, they're very cheap, but they're cheap for a reason.
Yeah.
Because if you have a car crash on Sheikh Zayed Road and they manage to scrape you up, throw you in the ambulance, and through the stress of it, you have a cardiac arrest on your way to the hospital, what do you think your death certificate's going to say? It's going to say heart attack, innit?
Yeah. You don't think of it like, you literally don't think of it like that, do you?
And that's not an accident.
That's the scary
That's natural
thing.
cause.
Yeah.
So a lot of insurers wouldn't cover for that event with an accidental death policy, but there aren't many reputable companies that do them anymore for that reason.
Yeah. They just get so much bad rap that it's just not even worth it. Yeah.
Where you can get £500,000 of cover for £6 a month. It's like, there's a reason it's that cheap, because it's never going to pay you out.
Yeah. And is that how cheap it is? £6?
The accidental death stuff is silly cheap.
Yeah.
But if you want a proper policy, look, it is going to be more. It's like, but again, it's like anything, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
But an example I use with people as well is that, do you insure your car?
Yeah.
Do you insure your holidays?
Yeah.
Do you insure your mobile phone?
No.
Do you insure your house?
Yeah.
Right. What pays for all them?
Money?
Where do you get the money from?
I literally was like, is this a trick question?
No, but where do you get that money from?
Yeah. Going to work and earning money.
Okay.
So if you don't do that, you don't get it.
Exactly. So you're insuring the golden eggs, but you're not insuring the golden goose that lays those golden eggs.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, like, when you say these things, it literally is just... You're making it sound so easy. It's like, and when you asked that question, I was like, what do I say? Do I say, no, it is money. It's definitely money. You see it when I paused. No, definitely money. Sexual favours to landlord. But no, it is money. It's money at the end of the day, and you never really think about it because I suppose, and. Do you ever get it where a lot of clients will just turn around and go like, yeah, but I'm only 34, I'm probably not going to die for another 20 years.
Good mate of mine, he's not died, fortunately, but talking of serious illness, he is the fittest man I've ever met, health-wise. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's actually my personal trainer back in the UK. Online coach, at the gym every single day in like peak physical condition. Last year he got diagnosed with throat cancer.
Got what?
Diagnosed with throat cancer.
Wow.
Luckily they caught it quick enough and they managed to operate on it and get it out. But he's 33, I think. So
crazy, yeah.
It can happen to anybody. And I know people will be watching this, yeah, but that's once in a blue moon. But the earlier you take insurance out, the cheaper it's going to be for that reason.
Yeah.
Every 5 years you wait to take a policy out, it gets more and more expensive. But also you need to think that there's no guarantee that you will get insured in 5 years. What if you have a serious accident or an illness or something happens next year? After that, you're not getting insured because they won't cover you because you are now a much higher risk.
Higher risk, yeah.
And if you have a stroke crossing the street tomorrow, you won't get insurance again.
Wow. So it's important to take it while you're healthy, basically, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, I suppose, whilst you don't want to think worst case scenario, it's kind of one of those things where you just...
But again, why do you insure your car then?
Exactly, yeah, 100%. 100%. And how much would a typical life insurance cost somebody?
I'm not in the game of guessing because I always get these miles out. But I mean, look, typically for someone mid-30s, 40-year-old, £100, 500 dirham a month would get them an adequate amount of cover in place.
Yeah.
And again, it's like anything. In an ideal world, this is how much cover. Again, this is the question I ask a lot: is how much cover do I need?
Yeah.
And because a lot of financial websites or financial professionals will tell you need 10 times your income, you need 20 times your income. Like for me, that you don't. You need what's relevant to you. So, especially for expats living here, I always say to people, look, if you died, what would your other half do?
Yeah.
Would they move back to the UK or their home country? If the answer is yes, it's have you got a house there that they can move into? Then is there a mortgage on that house? Would you want that mortgage paid off? If they don't have a house, would you like to buy them a house for your family to live in? Right, there, that's a cost straight away. Either to pay that mortgage off or to buy a new house. It's going to cost you X amount to furnish that house. Do you want to include that? Yes. What are they going to live off for the next 15, 20 years? You need to provide a pot to then provide an income for that. What about education? Like, do you want your children to go to university? Do you want your wife to have to pay, if you use my example, would I want my wife Laura to have to find the money for that? No, I'd rather make sure that I've got that in a policy to pay for their education, so it's there.
Yeah.
Any other debts that you've got, would you want them cleared off? Okay, so that's the number, what you need in an ideal world, but in a realistic world, it's like, look, how much can you afford? How much are you comfortable putting away a month? So it may be that much covers £400 a month, but you're only comfortable putting £200 a month towards it.
Yeah.
So therefore, we can tailor it. We can sort of play around with the numbers, decrease the amount of cover to get it in line with what your budget is. Because look, in an ideal world, we'd all be walking around with millions of pounds worth of insurance, wouldn't we? But in reality, we don't, because that costs money. And there's other things that money needs to take care of.
Yeah.
So it's finding that balance.
And when it comes to, I'm very disciplined. I do have a credit card, and I pretty much spend everything on that credit card and just pay it off at the end of every month. I'm obviously disciplined. Not a lot of people are that disciplined. And to be fair, I don't think I was always that disciplined, because I remember when I was about 18, I had a credit card and spent £1,000 on it and just didn't pay it off, because I was like, oh, it was nice spending, but now I've got to pay that money back. It just sucks. I remember the bank calling me up and saying, look, I've noticed you're not making any payments, so what we can do is just set up a direct debit for you. And I think that was a turning point for me to realise that, well, actually, owning people money, and it actually makes me feel like, it makes me feel just like, when I have to owe people money. Yeah. You know, but if somebody's in serious amounts of debt now, like, and they've literally found it a really difficult way out, like, what's your advice to help them get out of that?
First of all, you need to do a budget. So you need to work out what your needs are. Not your wants, what your needs are, okay? So all your bills, all your expenses, the school fees, the petrol in the car, the insurance for the car, everything. Yeah. Work out a total list of what all your expenses are, then what your income is. And then whatever the difference is, after you've put everything aside, work out how much of that can then go towards paying your debts off. And let's say you've got, and the different ways of clearing debts. Some people say pay off the highest interest debt first. I prefer something what's called the snowball method, mainly for the psychological wins that it gives you. So what the snowball method is, essentially, is, let's say you've got 5 separate debts, pay off the lowest outstanding debt first. So let's say you've got say £100 a month going to each of these debts, and the minimum payment on each is, say, £50 a month.
Yeah.
Okay. Put the minimum payment of £50 a month on the highest 4 debts, and put all the additional towards the lowest debt, and get that cleared off. Once that's cleared off, move on to debt number 2 with everything you were putting onto debt number 1, and then the payment on that as well. Once debt number 2 is cleared off, clear off debt number 3, and so on and so forth. So you get like this snowball effect with the speed that you're paying your debt off. And the reason for that is, like I said, for me, the psychological win of, I did have 5 credit cards, I've now got 4. I did have 4 credit cards, I've now got 3. I did have 3 credit cards, I've now got 2. And it just keeps you going, instead of trying to tackle the highest interest debt first, and that may take you X amount of years to do that. In the meantime, you're bouncing back on it and you're using it again. And if you don't trust yourself, I'd also just cut the cards up.
Yeah.
You need to pay them back.
Yeah,
stop spending on them.
Yeah, 100%. It is a vicious circle.
And again, that was a great tip as well, is you make it automated. Set up direct debit standing orders, which is what I say for people to save as well. So pay yourself first. So have you ever missed a mortgage payment?
No.
Right. Treat your savings the exact same way.
Yeah.
So the day after payday, you set a standing order up or a direct debit, and the day after payday, your savings and your investments leave your account. Call them a bill, call them a tax, call them whatever you want in your own head, but make it non-negotiable every single month.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually just finished reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And he said the same. It was like, in his book, he says, at the beginning of every single month, before you do anything, pay yourself first.
Yeah.
And obviously he didn't have two dads. He just had a friend's dad who was rich and his own dad who was poor. And then he's obviously gone on to be one of the most successful people in the planet. And then going on to cleared all the debts, ready to go. I've got money that I need to save. What's that kind of process and step like? What's your advice on where to put it? Because I suppose you've got high risk, low risk. Like, do you just kind of balance it out, or is it?
Yeah, so again, it depends on what people want. So actually, the first thing you do is get that emergency pot built up before you even look at investing. Because if you've not got that money saved there, the first time there's a hiccup in the road, you're either 6 months down the line having to draw money out of your investments or having to use a credit card to live off.
Yeah.
So get your emergency pot saved up. Once that's done, there's essentially, there's two ways to invest. Three ways to invest. One is invest. So the way I always look at this is saving, speculating, and investing. So saving is money in your bank. It's always good to go backwards. Once you take inflation into account, you'll get a bit of interest. It'll never really grow, but it's there. It's instant access. Yeah. That's your emergency pot. Second is speculating, and we sort of touched on this earlier. This is buying something that has no value to you today. So it's buying.
You're hoping that it's going to be something in the future.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's gold. It's physical assets. It's Bitcoin. So because you can hold a gold bar or Bitcoin for 1,000 years, it'll never earn you a penny until the day you come to sell it. For me, that's not investing. That's speculating. Because your entire hopes and dreams are pinned on the day you buy it and the day you sell it. Yeah. In the hope that it's that way and not the other way around. Then there's investing. So for me, investing is buying something what gives you two bites of the cherry. So while you hold it, it's paying you an income, and the day you come to sell it, assuming that the value of that has increased, and that's your capital gain as well. So it gives you two ways to make money on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and like I said, typically there's three real ways. One is property. So you buy a property, you rent it out, that's your income. You sell the property later down the line, that for a profit, that's your capital gain. Stock market, saying you invest into the stock market. While you're investing into the stock market, the companies you're invested in pay a dividend, which is just a share of their profits, what they give to shareholders. That's your income. The day you come to sell it, market's increased, that's your capital gain. And then third is fixed income. So essentially like a bond or a loan where you invest a set amount and a company or a government pay you a fixed amount of interest.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're the three ways to invest. If you're just starting out, I'd advise literally just to invest monthly into a fund what tracks the stock market. Keep it nice and simple. Don't turn into a day trader.
Yeah.
99.999% of people on the planet,
lose their
by
money.
opinion, shouldn't buy individual companies. Just buy a fund what tracks them all.
Yeah.
Because what makes you think out of the billion companies out there, you know which three or four are the best?
Do you know what? Look, listen, I make mistakes. And I remember once playing golf with this lad. And he was like, you should invest in Rolls Royce. It's really, obviously they do the engines for the planes and now COVID's over. Like they're going to be making more planes, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, I'll take a bet on that. Ended up putting $3,000 into Rolls Royce. Mate, just plonked. And I was like...
I lost my wedding fund 6 months before we were getting married.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. On which?
So, I was much younger back then. Had more hair as well.
How old were you then?
Mid-20s.
Yeah.
I was in financial services, mid-20s, and we were about 9 months before I got married. somebody told me about this a good friend, a very good friend, who shall not be named, and there were quite a few of us, and we got this hot tip on this oil exploration company in Kazakhstan. What can go wrong, eh? British listed company, UK listed company, and I put 30 grand in it, what was set aside to pay for the remainder of the wedding. I think I bought in at about, on average, about £1.80. It just went down and down and down. I think I sold that at 60p. And when I sold out, and then actually a couple of weeks later, the company just sort of froze up. The trading got suspended. So I'm glad I did sell out that, because it never recovered. But again, for me, that was luckily the wedding still went ahead. And I did have other savings to cover the wedding costs. But having that chat with my fiery missus from Yorkshire didn't go down very well.
But do you know what? It's good that you can admit that, because a lot of advisors would sit here and they wouldn't really talk about stuff that they've done. But I suppose that's what makes you really good about being a financial advisor, because you've been there, you've made those mistakes yourself.
And I've lived that here, and I've been in the days where I lived through a phase of not giving a shit about money, and quick as it comes in, it goes out. I did that through my early 20s, and it was only when my wife and I were going through numerous rounds of IVF, trying to have twin boys, and changing companies, and it not going as well, and the market being down, and me playing this victim of why me, why can't we have kids, why is this new company shit, why is the market shit, why is no one buying? When it were only when I sat back and took stock, looked up at this massive 4-bedroom villa that we're living in, what we didn't need, looked on the drive at the 2 flash cars that we didn't need, all the flash holidays we'd been on, going out every weekend, spending a fortune on brunches, living this lifestyle what we didn't really need. And it were at that point I worked out, which I'll not say the figure on here, but I worked out how much I'd earned since I moved to the Middle East, and how much I had spent since I lived in the Middle East.
Scary.
That for me were a big wake-up call, and that was when I really started practicing what I preach. And setting a structure in place, paying myself first, and getting myself out of this hole that I got myself in.
What's the best investment you've ever made?
It's going to sound really cheesy and cliche, but in IVF to get the boys. Expensive investment, but worth every penny.
And you've obviously got a little girl now as well. Was that natural?
No, that was IVF as well. So the boys were, I actually was speaking to him about this yesterday. The boys were 5th round of IVF out here. We had the boys at Bourne Clinic. We didn't have them there, but the IVF was there at Bourne in Dubai. We did Dr. Diana. She was amazing. We then moved back to the UK early 2020, and then Laura decided the second she gave birth to the boys, she wanted another. It took her 2 years to tote me around. We went to an IVF clinic in Sheffield, and it worked first time. I don't think there's any science behind it, but I actually put a lot of that down to the stress on Laura as well, because before we had the boys going through that process, we couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. It was like, what if we can never have kids? It was a stressful situation. As when we went again in the UK, we actually said, look, maximum 3 attempts. If it don't, because I couldn't have gone through what we went through for the 3-4 years before, it were horrendous. But that not knowing, we said, look, maximum 3 attempts. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but we're blessed to have the boys anyway. So we went into it with a lot more open-minded, that it'll be amazing if it does work, but if it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. And first time.
Wow.
So, like I say, I don't know if there's any science that backs that. But I do think that was a massive contributing factor. Just the amount of stress that Laura didn't put herself under going through that.
Well, thank you very much for spending the last hour or so with us. Really enjoyed just chatting. I feel weird sitting in these chairs, because I feel like we're just catching up. Do you know what I mean? So, but nah, really, mate, like hats off to you and kind of like what you've achieved. You should be proud. Do you know what I mean? And I'm sure you're out there helping a lot of people and advising people on also not only building their own wealth for later on, but also protecting their families as well.
Yeah.
So you're like a modern day superhero, and you know you're one of the guys that
I didn't want to say that.
Yeah, but you are one of the guys that sticks out amongst an industry that gets a lot of bad rap. Do you know what I mean? Like we spoke about that off camera and said like, you know, the amount of stuff that happens in that financial market, and like I was playing golf yesterday, and there was a De Vere golf day, and I'd never worked with De Vere, not once, but I heard so many bad things about them. Automatically, I always look at them and think, oh, De Vere, you know, like, sorry to anyone that works for De Vere. But
again, in their defence, I mean, I used to work there, to be fair, when I first came out here. And in their defence, there are a lot of good guys there.
No, exactly. But what I mean is, because you hear little things, and it's not just that company, for example, it's a number of different companies.
I think that's the industry as a whole, though, because, and a big part of that is the cold calling culture that's out here. Like, there's a reason cold calling is illegal in the UK, because people don't want it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm fortunate enough not to, I don't do it for two reasons. One, I find it unethical. Don't get me wrong, I did do it in my younger days. When I first came out here, that was how we were trained to find clients. But it never sit well with me. And like I said, I do find it an unethical way of doing business. But if I get off my high horse, the main reason is it's bloody hard work.
Yeah.
And there's much easier ways of doing business.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had it with, I mean, my role, you know, when I first started out, it was like, I used to get sometimes scared to call people because I didn't like that rejection of just, because I knew that it was annoying. Do you know what I mean? It annoys me when people cold call me.
I don't answer my phone anymore.
Do you know what they do here?
I don't answer my phone if I don't know your number.
Do you know what they do here now? Is they set up a call, so you answer, and then it rings, and then the other person answers, and then technically it's not a cold call, because you're the one calling them.
Okay.
Like, honestly, it's so annoying, and it's mainly the telecommunication companies trying to sell you like updated plans, and I'm like, they're like, hello, yeah, how can I help? I'm like, mate, you call me, like, leave me alone. But what I mean is, again, you know, there's never any bad companies as such, right? I mean, I suppose it's all down to the individual and the way they want to lead you with their advice. But the point I'm getting at is, like, I want to congratulate you and just say well done for sticking out in a crowd that gets a lot of bad rap.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep doing what you do, mate. And I look forward to seeing your fitness shoot as well that you got coming up.
Yeah. We'll
honestly, if you've not watched this on YouTube, go over to YouTube. What I'm going to do is. Usually what I do is I do snippets, and when we talk about the fitness journey, I'm actually going to upload some pictures of you now, like at the time, so people can see the difference, because you know, it's a huge achievement, mate. I mean, like you say, you were at your worst, you were what, 120?
120.
And now you're down to 89.
89 now, yeah. Mate,
that's nearly a female body. You know, like
it's a husky, isn't it?
Exactly.
We're carrying a husky on the bike.
Exactly. That's crazy when you think about it. Yeah, I was carrying a husky around for years. Now I'm husky free. But no, thank you very much.
Yeah, cheers, man. Thank you.
And if this is your first time, obviously, today, like I've actually been kind enough to be provided with the microphones and the cameras from Joe's team. But usually it's all production done ourselves. We don't charge anyone any money for listening or this advice. You have to pay for this man's advice, by the way. You have to pay for it. And I'm giving it you for free. But no, on a serious note, like we every week I do podcasts with people, and it's mainly just to help people like me when I was younger, just giving them different points of view, different advice, and helping them with every walk of their life to help, hopefully one day, one person just turns around and says, oh, thank you very much, that episode really helped me. So all I ask for is you go over and subscribe, follow, comment, share, anything to get this podcast into other eyes and ears around the world. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.